Good morning, happy Monday. Jackie Broman here from TBA Law. And it's interesting times that we're in at the moment. We're getting daily updates about what we can and can't do, and there's a lot of confusing messages out there. So we're still taking appointments at this stage. We're trying to do as many appointments as we can via phone and Zoom. We have those facilities available so that you don't actually have to come in if it's not for something that you need to sign for. We've actually started locking the front doors, so we don't want to encourage walk-ins at the moment. If you have an appointment, of course, come for your appointment and we'll open the door for you, just so that we don't have people that we're not expecting, I guess. I'm also running out to do a home appointment this afternoon for those people who don't necessarily want to leave their homes. We will do home visits within reason as well. So that's where we're at. The no more than 2 people meeting is a social gathering. It's not a professional appointment. So that's not something that's going to impact us. I think that some of the reporting about that over the last 24 hours has been a little bit confusing for people. So what we are trying to do though is, particularly for original documents that need 2 witnesses, we will generally have one witness actually present and another witness via FaceTime or Zoom. So they will be remote, they will physically see the actual signing, and then they will countersign their part later. So that's how we're managing at this point. And otherwise, to be quite honest, on the weekend, I loved being socially distanced. I had a very quiet weekend. All I did was walk the dogs 4 times, and I didn't otherwise do anything. So for all those closet hermits like myself, you might actually be enjoying being forced not to see people. But that all aside, life does go on, and I'm still going to continue doing these Facebook Lives every Monday morning. Last week I spoke about the state court system. So just doing a bit of general education, I suppose, about how the court systems work. And this week I wanted to talk about the federal court system. So as I explained last week with talking about the state court system, it's easier to understand if you think along the lines of the fact that we've got a federal parliament and a state parliament. So we also have federal court system and a state court system. We also have a federal police service and a state police service. So you can go back and have a listen to the other video about the state courts, but the federal court system is also a tiered court system, just like the state system. We used to have what was called a federal magistrates court, which was sort of the lowest federal court. That court changed its name a few years ago to the Federal Circuit Court. I don't actually know the real reasoning behind it. Not much changed practically. That's still the lowest level of the federal system, the Federal Circuit Court. And it deals with things like insolvency, it does some family law work, it does some federal crime. So that is the entry-level court, I suppose, for the federal court system, sorry. The next level, which is a little bit different from the state courts, is that there's 2 different courts at the next level. So instead of a pyramid, I suppose the federal court system's more like a diamond. So there's 1 court at the lower level, and then there's 2 courts in the middle level. So the middle level is then your federal court, and at that same level is the family court. So the Federal Circuit Court does all the things that the federal court or the family court does. But then in the middle, you've got a split where you've got the two different courts. So there's a family court and there is a federal court. Both of those court levels then have an appeal level. So you've got a single judge sitting in the federal court, or a full court sitting with 3 to 5 judges on either full federal or family law. And that's the Court of Appeal. So the full court is a court of appeal from the federal court or the family court. You can then appeal and their peers basically review the decision. So that's sort of as far as you go until you get to the High Court. And the High Court is then the highest level of the court for the federal system, but also the state system, surprisingly, right? So it's the highest level of the court. You can only go to the High Court if you have a matter of law that needs to be determined by the High Court. And you do it by application, and it's only if the High Court thinks that they actually want to deal with the matter. So if the High Court thinks that this particular area of the law hasn't been dealt with before, the High Court will hear it. Otherwise, the High Court will not allow the application. So last week I spoke about the Supreme Court being the highest level of the state system, and the Court of Appeal in the Supreme Court is the highest court in the Supreme Court. If you've had a Supreme Court decision and then you've appealed it to the full court of the Supreme Court and you're still not happy, on a point of law, you can apply to the High Court, jumping across to the federal system, to the High Court to determine that particular point of the law. Likewise, if you're in the federal court system and you've had a federal court decision and you've appealed that to the full court of the federal court and you're still not happy, you can appeal and have the matter dealt with in the High Court. So all state Supreme Courts can end up at the High Court. And so you get this position where even though the state laws might be different, ultimately the High Court determines the general law and the way it's to be interpreted across the whole country. So if, for example, and it sometimes works that even a Supreme Court decision in another state will apply. So New South Wales had a Supreme Court case dealt with recently in the full court as a Court of Appeal matter, which has pulled other states into line in that same decision. Now, if that decision had then been appealed to the High Court, all states would have had to apply that particular precedent in the same kind of way. So I hope that I'm not making it more confusing. Just so far to think that you've got a state court system, and that's the majority of state, that's the majority of where things get dealt with, depending on what state you live in, is in the state courts. Then you've got the federal system, and realistically, the only things that you really need to think about that might go to the federal court system are federal crimes, family law, or insolvency, right? So on a practical level, for day-to-day things, those things are federal. All right, so that's mainly what I wanted to get across, that there's two different court systems, each have 3 levels, with an appeal level at the very top and then the Supreme Court at the highest for everything. So hopefully, like I said, that didn't just confuse you even more. And next week I wanted to talk about how laws are actually made, which again, I hope I can break down to make sense. Particularly in light of the current situation that we've got, I can talk about the various powers that the federal and state governments have to make different laws on different areas, and who then enforces those things. I think that in some respects we can put it into context with the times that we're living in. So I won't ramble on too much. I hope that everyone is staying safe. We certainly can't avoid the messages that we're getting out there, so everyone will know to be social distancing, not to be touching your face so much, to be washing your hands more, not to shake hands. So please don't be offended when we don't shake people's hands. And we are just having to get used to potentially this new way of living. So again, we're still here for you. If you need things done, we do them via phone or a video appointment, similar in a way to this. So those are available as well if you don't particularly want to come out of your house at the moment. So again, I'll see you next week, same time, Monday morning, and please take care. Thank you.